will start coming on. We are going to address some of the things that are coming up with AHA with Amplify, and then we'll get rolling. So we're really excited that you're joining us on your Monday after the long weekend. Obviously, the third Tuesday of February landing after a long weekend always makes people's schedules pretty busy, and we really appreciate that you're taking the time at the beginning of a short week and a busy season to spend with us. So thank you very much for that and for spending your lunch hour with us. Today we have systems and projects, and we're really excited to have Neil. I'm going to introduce him in a second. Before I get to that, I want to tell you about what else is coming up with AHA with Amplify. Next month in March, we're going to have those precious ethic hours. So for all of you CPAs that need ethics hours, and of course, every business leader always needs ethics training, that's happening for the third Tuesday in March. We have Gerard coming back. We're going to deal with governance and ethics. So you'll get your ethics hours and we'll talk about governance. And everybody knows that in today's world with AI and what's happening with OpenAI and all the rest, there is no shortage of discussion when it comes to governance and ethics, and some pretty hot, steamy stories out in the media that I'm sure we can poke Gerard to get his opinion on. So I'm very excited about March's AHA with Amplify. That's a webinar at noon Mountain Standard Time. In April, we're going to bring some of our own amplifiers to discuss a really, really important topic. We're going to talk about talent. We're going to have some of our recruiters discuss how they help, what they're seeing, what the trends are. We know that as a business leader, people always come first, and it's one of the most important, rewarding parts of our leadership roles, but it's also one of the most difficult. So I think we're going to have a really amazing conversation in April with our own amplifier crew and talking about what we're seeing from a hot topic perspective with talent. So make sure to join us the third Tuesday in April, AHA with Amplify, a webinar at noon Mountain Standard. We also are going to have a live event in April, and that invite will be coming out very, very quickly. So make sure you pay attention to your AHA with Amplify email, because it will sell out and chances are it will only be offered to members and we won't get a chance to extend the invite. So that's coming very quickly. We were holding off on the details in the invite because we are in a new location. You can't see much of it at this webinar, but we finally moved into office space that's a term lease, and we're committed for 5 years. So a new space for live events and a new space to bring our learnings and our experts to you. Very excited about that here at Amplify. Lastly, not an AHA with Amplify event, but a bigger, broader birthday party. We are still planning that for May. And so you as AHA Amplify members will get first invite to that as well. We're celebrating our 5th anniversary, which just happened in the fall, but we wanted to have a little patio time. So we're hoping to get an event space that lets us be outside, which no one wants to be outside in October in Calgary. So that will happen in May. So lots happening, never a shortage of things that we can bring to you as our valued members. And we're really, really excited that you spend the time with us. Now, without further ado, let's talk about today. We're really, really excited to have Neil here with us. So Neil and I and Jesse all worked together back in our Big 4 days. And we were very excited when the team that Jesse and I were on bought Neil's company, actually. So, sorry, excuse me. He's a veteran entrepreneur. And then shortly thereafter, maybe 2 days after his non-compete ended, he went after it again and became an entrepreneur again. And so here he is as the founder of Red Pill to discuss with us everything he's learned from an entrepreneur doing system selections back in his old days to being part of a Big 4 and dealing with every size business you can imagine in his Big 4 days. And now again, as an entrepreneur dealing with all kinds of projects and systems. And so Neil brings an expertise. He is also a CMA or a CPA now, I guess, and having been right in the weeds as a controller. So especially is able to walk in the shoes of those project managers and project team members that come from the finance accounting department, but obviously very attuned to operations and every function that is part of a project. And I'm sure Neil will talk about how one of the lessons number 1 is every systems project should be a business project, not an IT project. Neil and I know that from our days working together, and then we're going to talk about what that means and what that looks like here today. So Neil, you can do a better introduction than I did and then get started. Thank you for being here for us.
Thank you, Jamie. Thanks for having us, and congratulations to Amplify for 5 great years. It's incredible.
I know it doesn't feel like that long ago that we quit on you, does it?
No, it doesn't.
I know, time flies. All right.
I'm
Thank
just
you, Neil.
share my screen.
We're just getting screen showing. Perfect. We can see it. We're all set.
Thank you, guys. Um, when I do these webinars, especially because I can't see you, I like to have them be super conversational. So if there are questions as you go along or comments, I think Jamie, you're going to moderate. You'll be passing on those questions to me.
Yes, I'll interrupt you constantly with everybody's questions. So don't hold back and make sure you type them out for me, and I'll make sure we get Neil's discussion.
So I'm just going to start off with a quick introduction, elaborating on what Jamie had started off with. I'll talk about some market trends and what we're seeing in the tech space, and you can probably guess what that involves. And then I'll talk about project success, because we're all involved in projects, whether they're technology projects or other types of business projects. And over the years of having my fingers in over 300 projects, there's definitely some do's and don'ts, and definitely some best practices I wanted to share with you guys today. So I'm Neil. That's my backyard in Burnaby, BC. I'm the founder and CEO of Red Pill Labs. Funny name for an advisory company. But when I started off, I wasn't sure that I wanted to be an advisor again. So I just incorporated under a very broad name, and then I can kind of have some bandwidth to play with different things. So we're a little boutique company based in Vancouver, BC. We help organizations rationalize their investments in technology. What does that mean? Well, it means your existing tech stack. Are you getting full value from your investment? Are there features and functions that you're not using? Are your business processes lacking? Are your systems not talking to each other? Are you due for some automation? So we go in and help companies with their existing tech stack, try to squeeze out every last bit of value from what they have. And then in some cases, our clients are on legacy tech stacks, so we have to go through a net new, ERP being a big one, HR systems another one, where we help organizations maximize their ROI on a net new investment. In a nutshell, we have 3 lines of business. The first being our software selection practice. So we help organizations with ERP, HR, point of sale, document management, anything technology related, we help on the selection side. The second project or second functional area we have is our project management. So once a client has picked a technology, they've contracted, our team gets dropped in as the client side project manager. And we have a little bit of a different bend on it, but it's been very successful for us. So project management, and we've also launched a change management practice. The third thing we do is we've started just through experience. We've worked with hundreds of different technologies. So for some technologies, we're like, skip the selection. We can go and give you what's the best in the market. So we have a project management software that we implement called Smart Suite. We have an AI tool that we implement called Gamma AI. We have Stix Intelligence, which is a really cool brand and executive reputation management tool. It scours the internet for anything that might be disparaging comments or disparaging about your brand or any of your executives. And the third thing, or the last thing, is we've recently launched a Ceridian Dayforce practice. So we're actually implementing HR systems now. So when it comes to technology trends, and as a tech professional, I always get asked, what's hot in tech? And the other question I get asked by CFOs and CIOs and other business leaders is, what should I be focusing on in the next 12 to 24 months? So as you can imagine, for the last few years, it's all been about automation and cloud. Automation and cloud. How do we get systems talking? How do we take manual processes and automate them? So our highly skilled professionals aren't doing mundane tasks in Excel or running pivot tables. They're actually utilizing the value of their education fully. But as you can imagine, for the last 24 months, it's all been about AI. So everyone comes and asks me about AI. What's happening with AI? How do I deploy AI in our organization? Where do I start? AI is in the news every single day. There seems to be a lot of excitement around AI, but there's also a lot of fear around AI. So I think it's definitely something that's evolving. Also, a lot of chatter about AI governance, which Jamie alluded to, and how do you moderate content? And then, Canada is actually somewhat on the cutting edge with Bill C-27. And how are we going to moderate the use of AI as a country? What are the best practices? What are some of the guiding principles? And that's all been published. The bill hasn't passed yet. I've got a copy of it. I started reading it and I kind of fell asleep, but I will hopefully the next couple of weeks finish reading that bill just to see what the feds are after. Just for a couple definitions before I start, I'm going to talk a little bit about machine learning. And machine learning systems learn from experience without any explicit instructions. They take and they look for patterns from data and then analyze that pattern and then make predictions based on what it's analyzed. So that's machine learning. Artificial intelligence is a combination of technologies and can include machine learning. AI systems perform tasks that mimic human intelligence, such as learning from experience and problem solving. Most importantly, I think what constitutes AI is the software is making decisions without human intervention. And that's, again, exciting for some, scary for others. And lastly, there's this concept rolling around called responsible AI. And it's the practice of designing, building, and deploying AI in a manner that empowers people and businesses and fairly impacts customers and societies, allowing companies to engender trust and scale AI with confidence. So how do you make sure that AI is deployed responsibly? We're seeing a lot of human in the loop. So there's actually a human moderating some of the content. And this stuff is still evolving. So every single day, it seems like there's a new AI company being formed. We get a news release from the big tech players. They're incorporating AI into their tech stack. Every now and then I'm excited about, oh wow, AI is doing this. And then every now and then I am actually quite scared about some of the stuff that AI can do, with faking and deep faking and all that stuff that's going around. Jamie, any questions so far? Do you want me to just keep going?
Go ahead.
So it's generative AI. That's the one that we're all probably toying with ChatGPT and some of the other AI tools out there. It's the ability to create images, speech, text. I've done PowerPoint presentations where I've used some AI when I got writer's block. So it's democratizing access to AI across the organization, which I walk around my small team and I see ChatGPT open and I see people using it for various things. Walking through a client site last week and I just polled everyone that I was talking to and, hey, have you used ChatGPT or some other AI tool to help you at work? And I think it was 80% people said yes. I've used it for drafting or doing research or even writing a report. They didn't want to be named, but yeah, they were using it for some of those things.
So the companies that are using it well, Neil, are you finding that they are providing leadership and direction and expectations, or is it really more of a bottom-up approach right now where people are randomly using it ad hoc to do the job that they're assigned and not a job that necessarily is expected that AI would be helping them?
That's a great question. It's definitely more heavy slated towards the bottom up, but organizations are seeing the power. They're reading about it in the news, and they're trying to draft a business strategy around AI and how will AI be deployed in our organization. And I got a couple slides talking about that. Who is actually responsible for AI in an organization? Is it the CFO? Is it the CIO? Where does it land, right? So I've got a few slides on that as well that I'll talk through.
Perfect. We'll talk about those when you get there. Thanks.
I love stats, and I love reading Gartner and sources like Infotech. And this one here, by 2026, which is 2 years from now, more than 80% of enterprises will have used generative AI APIs, models, and deploy generative AI applications in production environments. And right now, we're only at 5%. So you're going to see some huge adoption in the next 2 years, and it's going to be very similar to when the internet proliferated across organizations. So watch for that. The other one here is, this one again is from a company called Infotech. Top 5 technologies organizations not currently invested, but plan to invest in 2024. And AI or machine learning is at 32%. This one's from TD Bank. 68% of Canadians are concerned they don't understand the technology well enough to know the risks. And then 77% say they're concerned about the risk AI poses to society. I remember watching the Terminator movies and was it War Games back in the day, where the machines took over. And I don't think that's going to happen, but I think having the conversation and being well aware of what potentially could go wrong at AI's infancy is actually a good thing. And then the last one here from Infotech, 85% of organizations are using AI in some way, with 20% conducting proof of concepts. So that's another thing, Jamie, that companies are looking when they're looking top down, is where do we actually get some business value from AI, coming up with a list and then prioritizing where we want to tackle it, and then doing a proof of concept. So really stepping it into it very slowly. And then once they start seeing some business benefit, the plan is to expand it across the organization. Kind of like what happened with RPA a few years ago, when RPA, robotic process automation technology, was new. Companies were excited about it, but again, they wanted to have a strategy, a lot of small deployments. Once you start seeing the benefit, okay, now let's get more more embedded with our RPA provider. And sometimes it was multiple RPA providers. And I think you're going to see multiple AI tools like companies will deploy. So it won't be just like one tool. It'll be different tools across the organization. So finance will have their tool, sales will have their tool. And from what I'm seeing, a lot of the benefits from AI will actually be incorporated into their tech stack. So they're not actually going into a different tool to use AI. It's actually going to be incorporated into their normal day-to-day processes.
Yeah, and there is a couple questions from our members in regards to that. So one of them being, other than ChatGPT, what are other AI tools widely being used in workforces? And I know we've got a client, Chata, which is interesting because it addresses AI right within your internal data, which is exciting because there's the ability to have privacy and use data that's already there. And we know for many of us, we have a lot of data, but not good reporting or integration or use of the data, right? So that's amazing. And then of course, Copilot's introduced a lot of pretty cool things. So you're seeing more Copilot compete with ChatGPT, but a friend of mine was just talking about the Google one. The name of it escapes me at the moment, but what are some of the examples that you're seeing, and are you seeing many that are customized within companies yet?
Yeah, I think everyone's jumping on the bandwagon, and like, honestly, as I follow AI and machine learning and trends, it's a little overwhelming. There seems to be a couple companies popping up every week. And ChatGPT is the one that everyone knows. But there's a lot of little chatbots that are popping up that are very, very specific to, healthcare or auto sales. We partnered with a company called Kama AI, which is an Indigenous-owned Canadian organization that basically brings AI into the enterprise. And how they started was they wanted to capture stories from their elders in different Indigenous communities. And, traditionally the stories have been passed down verbally. And what they did was, well, why don't we start using AI and develop a technology where we can capture these stories from the elders and then make these stories available to the next generation and generations after. And they started deploying that across different Indigenous organizations across the country. And then they're like, hey, this would be actually useful for the private sector. So what we're doing is we're taking AI and we're trying to capture knowledge that are sitting in executives, in business unit leadership, in middle management, that we can share with new people joining an organization, juniors joining the organization, to speed up their ramp up, their onboarding. So a lot of knowledge is contained in documents that people can't access. It's a lot of tribal knowledge. And just think about our days at the Big Four. You've got fresh new students coming in from school. Doesn't matter what city. I imagine they're asking the same questions for their seniors and their managers. Somebody in Ottawa is probably asking the same question that a first year is asking in Vancouver. Same thing in Calgary. So if you could actually capture those questions in an AI engine, all of a sudden, after about a year, and you got the next intake coming in, you can be a lot more efficient because those questions have already been captured, right? Access to documents, all the onboarding documents. You don't have to go into the different platforms and look for them. You can just ask questions. And you can even have it moderate emails. So if there's questions that are coming through email, it can scan your email and actually start, building out its knowledge base. The thing is, the engine starts off really almost stupid, like it doesn't know anything. So you got to populate it with knowledge, right? And it's that population with knowledge that you want to moderate, because garbage in, garbage out. So how do you moderate that in an effective way?
Right, that's where the risk is, and where there's obviously a significant amount of bias and the rest, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of talk
Well, I
about.
can get back at it. We have other questions, but give
Yeah.
us more content and we'll come back to them.
Okay. Thank you. You're going to hear a lot of talk about AI governance in the next little bit here. There's different frameworks being adopted. So really, any AI governance framework will define accountability and responsibility for AI. Help define the AI risk management framework. Support ethical, transparent, and fair use of AI, which I talked about a little bit earlier. Define a framework to support ML and AI. And then the key components will include, how is AI deployed throughout my organization? Who actually owns AI? What's the operating model? Can anybody just go and sign up for a tool, or is it going to be somewhat restricted, or is there going to be an enterprise version? How do you I've seen, well, I know a few folks that use AI and ChatGPT, and they run their contracts through it, and I'm like, okay, you're running it through the open model. Who knows where it ends up and who has access to very pertinent information, right? So how do you operate ethically and with, with privacy parameters in place as well. Obviously, risk and compliance, model governance. So the AI governance framework should also define a set of metrics and key performance indicators, just like anything else that you deploy across an organization, that can be used to measure the success of the framework and the success of the implementation. So this is the interesting one. Who owns AI within the organization? So before we can jump to a conclusion, really, what business problem or business opportunity are we trying to address with AI? Who within the organization will define the requirements for an AI system? Is it finance? Is it sales? Is it IT? And again, how will you determine the business value being created, and how will this value be measured? And then how will the output of the system be or model be used by the organization? Is it again, I'm seeing all over the place where there's no governance at all, and it's just free for all. And then I also have a few clients where they've been banned from using AI or discouraged from using AI right now until they have their corporate strategy in place, right? So ultimately, the AI owner will be accountable for ensuring AI is used responsibly, ethically, in a transparent manner across the organization. Oops, a few more. So I was actually down in Austin, Texas last week. I went to NetSuite headquarters and spent about half a day just looking at how Oracle spent millions of dollars investing in AI, and they've been doing it for years. Even before all this ChatGPT stuff came out, they were definitely ahead of the curve. So big companies like Oracle, Microsoft, heavy investments in AI. And my goal when flying down to Austin was really to understand how is this actually going to improve the lives of day-to-day people on ERPs and HR systems. What's the actual impact? I get the whole chat GPT thing, but how is it actually going to be embedded into your application to actually benefit you from on a day-to-day basis? So what I saw a couple demos of predictive analytics. So the AI engine is basically scouring historical data. It's looking at forecasts. It's looking at trends. It's doing something that an analyst or a team of analysts would do, and kind of come up with the first draft of suggestions on how to optimize things like inventory, production planning, resource allocation, which I thought was pretty cool. But what blew me away as a recovering finance person was they ran a quarterly P&L, and the algorithms detected an anomaly in sales and then actually explained the anomaly. It's not out yet, and Jamie, I know you guys have a NetSuite practice. You probably have more insights into when this is coming out this year in 2024, but it was really cool because it had 3 months of P&L data, and the middle month had a huge anomaly in sales, and the AI engine was actually able to provide insights into why that anomaly occurred. And it looked at supply chain issues and said, hey, you had supply chain issues, you issued less POs, the time for delivery was actually slowed down. And so that's why your sales dropped significantly in that middle month. And that blew me away, because that's like, wow, that's stuff that you'd probably have your finance analyst or your financial analyst go and try to figure out, but that's just within 30 seconds that pops up and it's right in front of you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and the on the upcoming NetSuite upgrade, there's a bit of AI, but definitely the roadmap has most of it coming out in the future upgrades. But to your point, and it does go straight to one of the questions where one of them asked, like, are Microsoft products more likely to come out with first AI for ERPs, given that they're leading with OpenAI. But I think what's interesting is that ChatGPT is leading in regards to accessible AI. But to the point that you kind of alluded to, I wouldn't suggest that that company is necessarily leading in terms of AI capabilities. It's more about accessible AI that's user friendly and regular people can use it, as opposed to it being more sophisticated or more powerful than what Microsoft was already, frankly, working on their own, and Google and Apple, and of course Oracle, and we're Acumatica partner, and they're doing a lot too. And so I think a lot of those companies are actually neck to neck. It's just that they didn't come out first with something that was accessible. But speaking of ERPs, and it, when I was at the Acumatica conference, that was a huge, AI was the big topic, and NetSuite, obviously their upcoming conference, AI is the biggest topic. And so all the ERPs are really talking about it. But what I find interesting is, to some degree, I wonder, is this like more of a race of best of class, where your ERP is still obviously essential because you need it for so many things, but now the need to integrate could be less, because if you have a best in class system that your function uses, the need to integrate into the ERP and or bring it under the ERP could be less, because you can get your reporting and your data usage at an umbrella that's far better than Power BI, which is, Power BI is amazing when it's used well, but it's not cheap and it's not simple. But yet this AI is more accessible for regular people. So I just think it's fascinating how it could change, and whether or not the ERPs will actually be the ones that make the most use of AI, or if AI is actually like on top of the ERP. And I don't have a strong opinion, I just have questions.
Yeah.
But what's your thought?
That's that's a great way of looking at it. And I think unfortunately it's TBD. I think everyone's jumping on it. Everyone's saying, hey, we've got AI enabled in our tool set. Definitely Microsoft, their F&O product, NetSuite, Oracle Cloud, even Acumatica. We're seeing Ceridian Dayforce on the HR side. They're basically embedded Copilot into Dayforce, so they licensed it from Microsoft. But yeah, to answer the question, I think definitely you're going to see Microsoft and Oracle be definitely leading the pack in terms of AI enablement in their tools. But everyone's going to catch up, right? Everyone's going to eventually catch up, and some things will stick, and some things like will probably be released, and they're going to like, is this actually adding value, or is this kind of like a bit of a gimmick, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting next 18 months, 24 months. So I'm excited.
Okay, for sure. And I mean, the other thing too is, my stronger opinion is that those companies that are still performing within Excel and 1999 world, you're going to be that much further behind than you were yesterday, right? Because whether or not you've got your AI in great tech stacks and multiple applications, or sorry, whether or not you have your data and your information in multiple applications that are best of class, or all within an ERP, that's the type of thing where AI is going to have the most use. It's not going to be going into like random documents where you do your consolidation and where you do your analytics, right? And so the more your data is in good systems, well governed, accessible, the more powerful your ability to use AI is, and the more powerful you are going to be able to grow as a business. And so if you were far behind today, you're even further behind tomorrow, I think is one of the things that.
I totally agree. And I think if you're totally cloud enabled and all your tools and your best of breed are on the cloud, I just think AI is going to be that much more powerful for you, as opposed to having it on premise on a server, restricted, with
File.
Yeah. So I think I'm hopefully you bring me back a year from now and we have a follow-up discussion, because a lot of this is still early days, and as somebody who's trying to stay on top of this, it's a little mind-boggling right now with all the announcements and different things coming out. On the HR side, continuous feedback, so AI enabled tools can give feedback from various sources, and you're not waiting till annual review time to start looking at scores and looking at where your team's stacking up and who's going to deserve a raise and who's going to get a promotion. That can be continuous, happening throughout the year. So it's going to make for a better employee experience potentially. Again, predictive analytics, looking at the data to identify trends, potential areas for improvement, and helping managers make actual data-driven decisions. We all think we're data-driven, but I think with having AI enabled is going to help us actually be really truly data-driven. And then with some larger clients, understanding workforce needs in the future. What does that look like, right? How are HR teams going to get ahead of recruitment, succession planning, and skills development? How many times have you walked into an organization, Jamie, and you start talking about something, and yeah, we have that role, but it hasn't been filled, or we have 10 open spots right now that we were given by the business that we have to fill. Again, can we get ahead of that and lessen the curve and be a little bit more proactive when it comes to workforce planning?
Yeah, almost every recruiting job we do is a fire that someone has to put out. It's not predictive and planned, that's for sure.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit. There's a few more questions on AI. I can take those. Otherwise, I'm going to talk about project success and what it takes to be successful for a technology project.
Yeah, no, let's jump into that, Neil. Thank you.
Thank you.
We can come back to AI questions if anyone has more, type them in, but we'll move on to project success. Thanks.
And when you're putting these presentations together, you're always looking for the right images. And I found this image, it's royalty free, but these guys look like they're successful. They're not stressed, and they're working on a project. So I'm not going to read this all to you, but completed projects are not necessarily successful projects. So back in the day, you bring an ERP vendor in or a CRM vendor in, and they put up all their logos, and these are all the companies we've worked with, and they're all successful. And you can contact them, and they'll tell you how successful we were because we were on time and we were on budget. And again, that's great that you're on time and on budget, but it doesn't necessarily mean the project was a success. There was a KPMG 50% of respondents in a KPMG survey indicated that projects fail to achieve what they originally intended. So was there a business case put together before embarking on the tech project? And then was there some sort of measurement afterwards, 6 months, a year, 2 years later? Did that investment actually achieve what you wanted it to achieve? And a lot of companies actually don't do that. It's quite surprising. So at Red Pill, we have this point of view, and our point of view is a project is successful. Obviously, you want to have it on time, on budget, meeting scope definitions. But did you actually meet the project goals and objectives? Did it actually accomplish what you wanted to accomplish? If your goal was to reduce your close time and your time to financial reporting, did that actually happen? Like, did you measure what it was before? What was it after? And if you hit your target, you can say you're successful. Or is it something that it's a continuous work in process that you're working towards? You're closing it at day 18 and you're trying to get it down to day 7. The tech project was your first step there, and you're down to day 11. Right? And then you still got 4 days to go to hit your target. And maybe it's more process things, or maybe it's a better reporting tool, or other things that you can kind of move the needle in terms of that objective. Did you actually meet your quality standards? Do you actually, are people actually using the system? Are people actually able to get rid of their little side Excel sheets? Are you actually moving the needle? And then the third thing is user satisfaction. Are users happy with the system? Are they finding it more cumbersome? Is there automation involved? Are you actually making people's lives easier? So if you can actually hit uh, budget, schedule, scope, and then usability and quality standards, you're going to have a lot of user satisfaction and you have a successful project. There are foundational elements to a successful project, whose seeds are sown years before the actual project kicks off. So typically, most companies have a business strategy, and that's the first thing you want to make sure that you have. And then with the business strategy, do you have an underlying technology strategy? So a lot of companies will have a 3 to 5 year roadmap for their technology, which underpins their business strategy. And then from there, we'll actually work on specific initiatives within the technology strategy. And that usually involves some sort of software selection. So I've been involved in over 200 software selection engagements and over the course of my career, and a lot of things can go wrong when you're selecting software, and we have a bit of a playbook. And again, there's different ways to do it, but I think having a steering committee, having some governance around the selection, having it, like you said, Jamie, being business led as opposed to IT led or strictly finance led, have it being led by the business is actually really important. And then the actual implementation journey. I'm going to talk about some best practices there for implementation. So again, business strategy, then your tech strategy, and then specific initiatives within the tech strategy, doing the selection properly, and then the implementation. All that jives, and then you have what we call a happy camper.
Nice.
Oh, that was mini-me. Rest in peace. This is my top 10. So this is in order of what I think is in order of importance when it comes to pitfalls that people or companies fall into when they're working on tech implementations. So number one is vendor selection issues. So choosing the wrong ERP vendor or implementation partner. And I'm sure the audience here has heard some of the horror stories on failed implementations or implementations that were supposed to take 12 months. 4 years later, they're wrapping it up. I was having coffee with a CFO this morning, and they were telling me about a 5-year ERP implementation that they just completed. And again, it was only supposed to be 18 months. Again, not that they picked the wrong ERP, but there's a lot of whole host of different things that go wrong. Maybe it was the wrong partner, and maybe the evaluation wasn't thorough enough. It can be a number of things. This is my other one that I'm seeing a lot of is underestimating resources. So, most businesses run pretty lean these days. So there's not a lot of excess capacity within organizations. You don't have people just sitting around waiting for a project to come by. And so what's happening is, there's a lack of backfill strategy. There's a lack of, hey, how are we going to actually staff this initiative? Are we going to backfill? Are we going to hire some contractors? Are we going to rely on the vendor? Most times what I'm seeing is the burden is actually put on the existing staff. So you're doing your day job, plus you're working on the project. And that can lead to a lot of the issues with incomplete implementations or employee burnout. Insufficient executive support. So lack of support from top level management can hinder decision making and stall progress. Strong executive sponsorship is crucial for overcoming obstacles. So again, having the right level of executive support. I've worked on projects where it's been initiated by mid-level IT resource. And over experience now, I won't work on those projects anymore. I want to have the C-suite behind my projects that we work on. Otherwise, I will probably steer away from those because they're just too risky. weak project management resources, and I have a slide talking about this, but getting someone internal to do the PM work when you actually need a project manager who's done who's got a track record, whether you have an internal PMO or you hire in for that position, you want to make sure that you have strong project management resources. And this is the one that you've probably seen, over customization. So we're working on a NetSuite deployment right now. One of our measures of success is to have zero customization. So can we actually tweak our business processes to match what the software offers, or are we so embedded, is it so strategic, our business process, that we cannot, and we have to adopt the software to our business process? And that's where you get into customization. It gets expensive. You got custom development, and what eventually happens is your upgrades, and you're basically putting yourself in a future predicament, not knowing about it today, if that makes sense. Again, not aligning with business processes, that's number 6 on the list. If you don't align with business processes or have the right buy-in from the business, you run into change management issues, which I'll talk about next. So do you actually tailor the ERP to fit with your existing business processes, or do you actually look at your business processes and say, hey, we're just going to adopt whatever the ERP has? Because the ERP usually is based on a product like NetSuite has tens of thousands of users across the world, and they're not going to have business processes in there that are going to stifle your growth. They're going to come with best of breed, or best practices, or leading practices, whatever you want to call them. Inadequate change management. This one kind of speaks for itself. Again, I was talking to the CFO this morning, and I'm like, yeah, how much effort did you guys put into change management? And they're like, well, we got into year 3 of the implementation, and then we realized that we didn't put anything into change management. So, really understanding the environment, the business culture. If you've got, geographically separated business units that have different businesses that they run, so very, very decentralized, you got to really focus on change management. If you have something that's a little bit more centralized, you can have a little lighter approach. And again, it just depends on the size of the company. What impact will the technology have on the end user? If it's going to be a significant shift in their day-to-day, well, you got a change management problem. Lack of integration. So I'll just use ERP as an example. If you just go ahead and implement an ERP in isolation, not looking at your end-to-end business, you could end up with another data silo. And we're seeing a lot of that. And again, over the last few years, like I talked about, big push on automation, big push on systems talking to each other, getting that integration out. And then now with the launch of AI, maybe we can avoid some of those costly integration projects in the future. This one surprises me. It still happens. We'll put millions of dollars into the implementation, and then we'll put 3 weeks in the project schedule for testing. And when we get involved in projects, we make sure that testing is, we almost bore people with the amount of testing we do, because having that 99% confidence going into go live is so key. Having that rigor, having that, all the controls around testing, having a testing plan in place ahead of testing is super important. And then when you go live, it's almost a non-event. You go live and people are like, oh, we're on a new system. We haven't had any issues. Well, yeah, because we, spent 2 months testing. We did testing in isolation, and then we did system testing across the system, and then we do user acceptance tests. So it's a bit of a formal process, but you know, you can never overinvest in testing, in my opinion. And then lastly is ignoring continuous improvement. You go live on a tech project. There's always that stabilization period post go live where, you know, might on an ERP or an accounting system might take you first 2 month ends to get things dialed in. And then it's like, okay, we got the system up and running, we're good, right? But then what's next? Like you always got to be on this continuous improvement journey. Otherwise, you know, we walk into an organization that implemented a system 4 years ago, and they're already kind of like feeling like the system is stale. It's not meeting their processes. If you're on the cloud, NetSuite has what, 2 releases a year, Jamie?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's new stuff that you can opt into. And again, if you keep looking at what's available and incorporating it on a systematic basis, you're never going to be, you know, behind like we were on the old on-premise days where we had systems deployed and then not touched for 10 years or 15 years.
Yeah, totally. Lots there, Neil. I mean, on the continuous improvement, just starting with the recency, it's interesting because I think in a lot of ways that's a deterrent for adopting new technology and adopting a new system, because the idea of like once you do the implementation, you're never ever actually done isn't exactly compelling or motivating, Neil. But we're not here to sell or to convince. We're here to be honest, and I think it's incredibly true. But the good news is that it becomes a wish list and it becomes an opportunity, and you're constantly getting better and better because you're like, I can do more, I can achieve more, I can get rid of this stupid task that I hate every quarter. And so it is actually exciting and inspiring and a good news thing. It just doesn't sound like it. But the reality is if you are committed to continuous improvement, it becomes like a wish list and an opportunity driver, as opposed to putting out fires and constantly dealing with problems, right? And so I think because we're used to our legacy systems, when we think about it, continuous improvement, we think about continuous firefighting and problem solving. But actually, if you really commit, it's not that. It's opportunities and inspiration and wish lists and getting better, and not to be cheesy, but it's about amplifying, right? It's not about just constantly figuring out the latest issue or burden or barrier to your business. And so that's the difference, but it takes a commitment. And a lot of people think that they're going to finish an implementation, throw a little party, and then it's like, oh, that's behind me.
Problem solved, right? Yeah. And what we're saying is don't disband your governance model, because, you know, start putting a list together of opportunities. And then, you know, maybe you've got 15 things that you want to tackle. And then, you know, with those 15 items in the future, you might want to have a bit of a prioritization model, right? So not everything on that initiative list is going to be weighted the same. Some things are going to be very easy to implement and low cost, low risk, then you know, prioritize those. If they're larger initiatives with high cost and they're risky, you might want to, you know, defer that till the team's got a little bit more appetite to take something like that on.
Totally. Other things to chat on, like just going bottom to top, just for simplicity, inadequate testing. I mean, it is so iterative with your change management comment, because the consequence of over testing or testing a lot is incredible change management, which you alluded to, right? Being that through that testing, that's where you're getting the buy-in, the learning, the training. And so it accomplishes much more of your goals than just literally testing, right? And I think like where you can have over testing is where you're trying everything, every possible thing that could go wrong, where it's like, okay, wait a minute, if the probability of that is 10% and the possibility is once every 3 years, well, maybe we just accept that that's a manual process. That one's not automated. That's not going to fit. So then what are the controls in place that you identify that, and then you just take it out of the process, take it out of the tech, and manually deal with it in an inefficient way, because it's so unlikely and so infrequent. And so the only place I would argue with you can't over test is that concept of testing for things that it's like, that's okay. No. If that ever happens, we should we shouldn't be designing a system or process. We should just accept the fact we're rolling up our sleeves and
No,
doing it like the 1982 way, because
that's
it's
a great
gonna
point.
happen
Yeah. Oh,
anyways.
no, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, no, if it, if it's something that you come across once every 3 years, yeah, you probably don't want to test and you want to deal with on an ad hoc basis. Just interesting, you find that your testers are actually end up being your super users usually because they just get so embedded in the system.
So pick them
Uh,
wisely.
yeah, for sure. As they resolve issues and bugs and retesting and testing again and going through and signing off, all of a sudden when you go into production, you really rely on those testers. So really, like you said, pick your testing team with a bit of a strategy.
Yeah. The other thing, like it was funny this morning, I was talking to someone who's putting in a system, not with us, but I was telling them how important it would be to hear from you and maybe someday um we could help them or whatever. So what I was saying to them is, I find three things that are common, which are, I think, fit into your 10, but let's just discuss how and where they fit in. One of them is certainly people always underestimate how many people they're going to need. And that's a big problem because it isn't a side of the desk project, right? Whether we're talking about putting in these latest and greatest AIs that we talked about at the beginning of today, or if we're talking about the full ERP, which is one of the bigger systems, or whether it's a CRM or your HR system, it's rare that these are side of the desk projects. And certainly even the biggest companies in our communities run relatively lean. And so they're what side of the desk? They're already overflowing on their desk, right? So there is no side of the desk left. So that's one thing that I would say we consistently see, whether it's at the biggest companies to the smallest companies. It's that, and you've got that, I think, captured in number 2 and number 4. And then the next one would be we see big issues with data, and when they go to do the testing or to put the data in, they realize just how junk their data is. And I'm curious, like, I think that you did cover that, but it's not as obvious where you covered that. So just throw that ball at you for a second.
That was number 11 on my list, but I wanted to keep it to Neil's top 10 instead of Neil's
Okay.
top 11. Yeah. And again, this is what I'm seeing. A lot of companies are very much limiting the amount of data conversion that they're doing. So they're keeping either it in a data warehouse, they're keeping the legacy system open for a few years. They'll just keep a bare minimum number of licenses. So we're seeing a less and less of companies trying to bring over enormous amounts of data into their new system.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess it kind of speaks to what we were talking about before. There's a difference between volume and moving data versus discovering your data is like shit, right? And so if it's the latter, you're really stopping yourselves from a lot of opportunities. And so it's important to really think about your data. And if it's not in a good state of health, make that a priority, because it's going to affect all these system implementations, plus your ability to use AI, et cetera. And if it's just a volume situation, well, maybe AI will solve that for you and be able to look at your legacy system and your new system and figure it all out, right? So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then the third one we see is really that process is either, again, they're processes, not to be too blunt, but the processes are kind of shit to begin with, and or they're okay, but they're trying to force those into a best practice system instead of recognizing like where the processes should be, where you should be leveraging the technology and using best practice. And so we see a lot of process issues, and people use the implementations of various systems to revamp their process because it kind of gives them a license and a ticket or awareness. And then it becomes a process project, which is appropriate in the sense of it being a business project, but almost certainly is going to change your deadlines and your objectives, and it just changes the scope entirely, right?
Yeah, if you're not improving your processes, you got to question why you're doing this whole technology project in the first place.
Yeah.
And from experience, like, business processes are what they are and they evolve over time, and people change and they just come in and they get slotted in and they just kind of continue with the existing business process. And so when we go into vendor selection and we're looking at new products and we're doing requirements gathering, that's a bit of a skill because, if you're not really in tune with what's going on, you're going to just capture the existing requirement as it is. And then what happens is your new system ends up looking like your old system because the requirements you gathered were based on the old system. So really having the ability to challenge, the requirements and challenge the processes and thinking about, hey, if technology was not a limiting barrier, cost was not a limiting barrier, how would we want this process to function in the future? And then kind of having that as your blue sky vision, and then trying to get as many of your requirements towards that blue sky vision that you can, right? Otherwise, you're in this vicious circle of your old system your new system looking just like your old system.
Which brings in like number 5, the over customization, and a few of your other items on this top 10 list. And the ironic thing is that the reality is that blue sky vision, if you are taking best practice and leaning into the technologies, is probably actually cheaper, both in time and costs overall, because otherwise you end up with long-term costs of that customization and maintaining it and what have you. So let alone the impact it has on the immediate implementation, right? So
yeah, no, for sure.
Awesome. Okay.
And then my last slide before we get into just general questions is this one's kind of my pet peeve. We walk into the following scenarios when it comes to client-side project management. So client will use an internal resource to act as PM. So if you got a PMO and you have a team of PMs, this makes a lot of sense. But sometimes we'll walk into a company and they're gonna, they've identified Bobby Joe in finance. She's an AP clerk. She's really smart. We're going to tap her to be the project manager on this project, right? And something obviously it could work, but more often than not, it doesn't work. The other thing we see is the client relies on the PM from the actual systems implementer. This is good, but when you think about the PM from the systems implementer, when things get dicey, whose interest does the PM look after? Do they look after their, where they're getting their paycheck from? Or are they actually very client centric and actually looking after the client's best interest? And that's why we always say you got to have a PM either internally or you bring in an outside PM that's there to represent the client. Client sources an independent PM or a contract PM, or it's a full-time employee. Or we've actually seen, we've taken over projects where the whole PM role is left vacant and, the role is just, ad hocly filled by IT or finance, more of a coordinator. There's no active risk management. There's no status reporting. There's no definition of a critical path. There's, it's just a poorly run project, in my opinion. Typical outcomes, project manager lacks experience or tacit knowledge gained from repeat implementations. Systems implementer PM lacks oversight over client resources. So, a lot of times, the implementer gets blamed for a failed technology project, but really there has to be some accountability on the client side. If the client doesn't show up prepared, if they don't do their homework, they're not reviewing documents and signing off things on a timely basis that they agreed to on the project plan, that can lead to issues. A lot of times we'll see independent PMs, you get them off of Indeed, and they'll get bored halfway through a project or things are a little bit too intense for them and then they step out. And then you're left without a PM, and trying to onboard another PM causes a lot of disruption. And then the other thing we see is if you don't have the PM role filled properly, the project just stumbles along. That CFO that I was talking to this morning, 5 years to implement an ERP and HR system when they should have been done in less than 2. So that's a typical outcome. So if you have a PMO, you're super lucky. If you don't, there are best practices out there that you can adopt. And then
Yeah,
end of
those make sense for sure, Neil.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the project management is of vital importance. And I think we were just talking about this within our CFO group the other day. In many ways, if you're running a successful project, the project management role and responsibilities can feel unnecessary, right? It's like you're talking and you're sending the updates, you're going through everything, you're going through the process, and there's no response, and it's just easy. But the funny thing is that like that can be a sign of a great project. It's because you keep the discipline and you keep on top of it that it feels easy. But so often people will neglect those communications and those basic best practices, and then it very quickly results in massive issues.
Yeah, and it's a fine line, right? If you're a 3-person finance team in a small company, maybe you can get away without having a PM. But if you're 30-person finance team, or you've got 100 users that are going to be affected by this technology, and it's going to take 18 months to implement, definitely need a PM. And it's not always a full-time PM. We see a lot of projects where you can bring in a PM 1 to 2 days a week and be super successful. And we argue, even with our most intense ERP implementations that we work on, with multiple integrations, with multiple products, we rarely will have a full-time PM on those engagements. It'll be, for something like that, max 3 to 4 days a week, as long as they're running efficiently. So what we're also seeing is a lot of wasted dollars in hiring a full-time PM when you don't need a full-time PM.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That in a lot of times it wouldn't be a full-time, because it's a bit of a nagging role and a hurry up and wait, right? Because
Exactly.
if you're literally just the PM, which a lot of people wear multiple hats, certainly. But if you were literally just the PM, well, then, you're always waiting for someone else or checking in with someone else. So you hit a lot of bottlenecks, right? So hard to be full-time when you're not, you don't have agency in terms of like the actual getting things done part. So I could see how it would be pretty rare that that's a full-time role for sure. So just as we have people wrapping off, we're going to do some question and answers with Neil. So please do let us know what else you'd like him to share. Before we wrap into that, I just want to let everybody know we are very excited to be a new Acumatica partner, and our website is almost ready to go. So the information will be there. In the meantime, when you go, you'll only see us as a NetSuite partner, which we're also excited about. To celebrate these big moves with Amplify Tech, we do have a free implementation contest. So every applicant of that contest does get 35% off of their implementation, and someone will be getting a free implementation along with some other amazing prizes. So this is a big campaign for us in order to kick off Amplify Tech's new partnership and that move from being a NetSuite partner to an emerging ERP implementation partner. And we're really excited to share that knowledge and to share these technologies with our members and our clients. So thank you very much for everybody's support, and please make sure to take a look at that contest and celebrate these big moves with us. So Neil, as we were just talking about, obviously Amplify Tech does a lot of ERP technology implementations, but my CFO group does all kinds of implementations and systems and projects of all types. And then, of course, our recruiting candidates, oftentimes the reason they get hired is to either go on a project or backfill someone that's going on a project. So with that in mind, like obviously, we talked about even the biggest companies are lean, and certainly within back office functions like IT or finance and accounting, there's really no company I know of that doesn't make efforts to contain costs and run lean. And so money is obviously a big deterrent, but if you were to look at someone to run a successful project and taking money out of the equation, would you recommend that someone backfills a role and then dedicates more time to the project? So for example, you have a controller. Would you recommend they bring someone in to do the controller role and to backfill their day-to-day job, and then they put dedicated time and effort and more commitment towards the actual systems project? Or would you recommend vice versa, that people are hired to be on the systems project so the controller can continue to do their job and just be a member of the project with less responsibilities on the project? Like, I mean, I'm asking you about absolutes, and I know there's a zillion places between, but what would you recommend if money wasn't the biggest deterrent?
Yeah, I think it depends on the role, but I think, having your experts be involved in the project, like your controller or your operations manager, from an ops side, in the design and build and test, and having that, somebody who really knows and breathes, lives and breathes your business actually involved in the project is key. So definitely you want to backfill those roles. But if you're, bringing on somebody for, data conversion or, things like that, you can definitely get away with just hiring those resources and just plucking them into the project. So they're not really strategic,
Yeah.
task oriented, but where business knowledge is key. Definitely you want to have your controller or your senior finance people involved in the design and day to day of the project. So backfill for sure.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So one of the things, and I think, an area that you've helped a lot of businesses with is to have that focus and that appropriate time and effort spent on system selection. But we all know that many companies actually skirt that and chase the yellow ball and just go with the shiniest demo that they see. So, obviously, I think if you have a system selection done properly and you bring in the right stakeholders, that's the best practice. But if that's not possible or it's too late, how do you get everybody like singing the same tune and really invested in the same way? Like, because we see so many projects struggle because either it's owned by finance and accounting and not appropriately integrated with operations and dealt with operations, or vice versa, or any function of the business really. And going back to my original comment as we started this, it is a business project. It's not an IT project, it's not a finance project. Like, I think that it's critical. And so what are the best stories you've seen where you've been just impressed with the clients and the projects you got to be a part of, where they got this right?
Yeah, like on the what not to do side, we've walked into projects that are, failed and stalled and had to come in and basically hit the reset, right? So basically replan, rebudget, restaff, set new schedules and new milestones. And it's painful because, company might be already at it for about a year, morale is low, and you have to basically deal with that, plus all this negative sentiment around the technology. So you're basically starting from behind the starting line, and that takes a lot of effort. So if you can avoid it, avoid it. A lot of the companies don't realize the pain until they go through it. But on the good side, I definitely think, like, and this is where I think my mid-sized clients would probably be my shining examples, where it's a small executive team. They're all on board for the change that's coming. They're very proactive in putting together a steer code even before software selection starts. They start the change management process by bringing in the selection firm and basically announcing what the plans are. This is the reason why we're doing it. Start getting that initial, communication going. We've taken over projects and then we do a survey, and it's funny, we're like, oh, we didn't even know there was a project underway, right? And they've been at it for 12 months. So again, transparency, open communication, understanding the risks and having a mitigation plan for some of the risks, bringing in, the right governance model. And then, like I said earlier, really focusing in on the business process, really understanding that there's going to be change in the organization, that we're going to have to potentially adopt our business processes to the technology, and then having the right team, right? So it's like a hockey team. Like, so many things can go wrong in a game, and if you do, you make a few mistakes along the way, usually you can be okay. But it's a combination of things. If you start making errors in different areas in that top 10 list that I talked about, you fail in 2 or 3 of those, and all of a sudden your project's at risk. You do an adequate job on all 10 of those things, and I feel like you're gonna be okay.
Yeah, no, that's true. You don't have to be aiming for perfection, but just staying on top of those things makes a big difference. And I think the other point you make is so true. I mean, as a NetSuite partner, you can appreciate how many times we have to come in and do rescue projects because NetSuite Direct has tried to implement the system and it's a disaster. And honestly, a lot of those projects, it's going to cost them more to rescue and re-implement than had they just done it right the first time. And so, the tendency to buy from directly from Oracle and then end up with a project that's absolute disaster. And it's really hard because people hate the system at that point. They've already overspent their time, their money, and their mind share and their emotions, and it's almost impossible really to overcome that. And so a lot of times we don't end up taking those projects because we're a client experience firm, and there's really no outcome here where we deliver where you're going to be happy. You're just so in the dumps and so upset that how are we supposed to actually rescue that? And if it was to happen, it would take time and money that you're not willing to put forward now.
Yeah, and obviously I know you and Jesse for years, and you guys are a high integrity firm. I think your costs will probably be a little bit higher than what Direct would have, right? And I think there's a reason why, because you feel like you're not skimping on the implementation effort. A lot of times when you go direct and you, because the dollar amount's lower, and that's the driving decision, it ends up costing you more in the end anyway, right? So why not do it properly from the get-go?
Yeah, and you see that, certainly not as much with local partners who often share values that Jesse and I and our whole Amplify Tech, I mean, they're incredible with how they prioritize clients. But and most local competitors, when you lose to them, it's usually the system that got picked, not the people. And you're excited that hopefully it's still the right decision, right? Not every system is going to be right for every ERP implementation. But yeah, when you lose to NetSuite Direct, it actually breaks your heart a little because you're like, it's highly unlikely this is going to result in success.
I'm excited about your acumen practice because I think you've got two of the best ERPs on the market. And I get to see them all, and I'm glad you settled on those two. Great decision.
Yeah, I'm excited too, and we did pick them 100% because that's our bias. We think they're the two best for sure.
Yeah.
So it's awesome. And it's exciting about your HR system. Goodness, like everybody needs a good HR system, and a lot of the ERPs, the system they have within the ERPs are not necessarily up to par with like the changing modernization of HR, right? And so that's an exciting move for you.
Yeah, no, we're very excited about Ceridian Dayforce, and they've actually changed the name. It's not called Ceridian anymore. It's officially Dayforce.
Nice.
And yeah, we're excited about the brand new practice, and it should be an interesting 2024 for us.
Yeah, look at us graduating, us alumni just graduate, moving on up, figuring things out. It's awesome. Any other questions from our members before we wrap this up and let everybody get back to their Monday? Neil, a couple quick things I'd like to ask. Tell me about the absolute best project you ever did and the one that when you close your eyes and you're like, why the hell do I do this? That you remember the value you gave and the reason you do this.
Yeah, I remember doing one ERP project for a client. I won't tell you who they were, but they were a food manufacturer, and the system basically would not let them add any more SKUs. So they were maxed out, and they didn't know they were maxed out on SKUs. And being, a consumer goods and food company, they're always innovating and coming out with new products. All of a sudden, they realize, hey, we can't add any more to our current system. So got the call to come in and do a quick selection, and so we fast tracked it, and they ended up on a great product, and we're able to get business flowing again. That's a great one. My worst one probably is I had a retailer call me, brand new. They were opening up their first shop, and they were 11 days away from the store opening, and they had not picked any point of sale technology. So I had basically a day to get the contract done, and then 10 business days to actually go and find them a point of sale. And and get it all set up for opening day. And definitely if you're hiring a selection firm, give them a little bit more notice in 10 days, please.
Yeah, no kidding. And
Yeah.
point of sales is so critical for employee experience, right? Having been in that environment of client service and retail, et cetera. Like if that system isn't one that the employees are confident in, everything else is
Oh,
crap.
and you're a brand new brand with a brand new store. There's a lot of excitement. You're spending a ton of marketing dollars bringing people in, and if a transaction takes 4 minutes to convert, and there's a long line, that's a pretty crappy customer experience as well.
Yeah, totally, totally. That's important. So that's awesome that you pulled that off.
Yeah.
But again, you're selling it as in, don't ask me to do it again, but
No,
proud
please
that
don't.
I did it. Don't call me 10 days notice, expect me to repeat. I
And
like it.
on the flip side, having the right expectations on on an ERP implementation, again, typically you're not going to get an ERP implemented in 4 months. Sometimes people think they can get it in 4 to 6 months. If you're a small company, maybe, but if you've got finance, operations, sales, inventory, warehouses, and things like that, you're looking at anywhere from 9 months to a year and a half, right? So really having that factored into your schedule.
Yeah, no, that's a good point too. I think for myself, having gotten into this game, it's funny because internally we had a lot of pushback of like, how can you be a client experience firm and yet do implementations? Which is a super valid question, right? Because by and large, it's sort of not fun experience. But Jesse's got a team now with some amazing leadership and some amazing people, and they deliver client experience every day. And so I'm really excited that they proved those naysayers wrong. And so,
I love
but I don't think it's easy. Don't get me wrong, but it is being done, and client experience is being delivered. So I'm super excited about those people, and also really excited that Red Pill's doing something similar. I know we share a lot of aligned values when it comes to what the experience and the feeling of a great project should look like and be. And it's good to hear you bring some of those things up that will help you not get that experience.
It's great that clients are seeing some value from smaller firms, and you don't always have to go to the big four. Obviously the big four has its place, and I know you and I both have great relationships with various big four companies, but there's some real value to be had from using a boutique in certain cases.
Yeah, for sure. There's a place for all of us in that, and it just depends on what's needed. So that's awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
Neil, we're going to wrap it up here, and I just want to thank you again. Let everyone know that as Neil mentioned in his intro, he does project management. So including if you need a part-time project manager, as we mentioned, most companies do. He does Dayforce. He does all kinds of IT system selections. Make sure you give him a call if you need anything. Make sure that you enter our contest if you're in the cards for emerging ERP, and reach out anytime if you need anything with finance and accounting to Amplify. We're so happy that you spent our lunch hour with us learning. You'll get a CPD certificate as always. We're really excited to see you join us next month for governance and ethics. So those exciting ethics hours that we all need as CPAs, and of course as business leaders, governance and ethics is of critical importance. Gerard's back, and he got most fabulous feedback last time he was with us a couple of years ago. So super happy that he decided to join us for March. And April, hottest topic, never goes away, talent. We're going to have some of our internal amplifiers that see the trends and see the needs and see what's going on, share what's under the covers of so many clients that we work with, and how we can all get ahead of talent, because none of our businesses would be anything without our people. So we have to make sure it's a priority. So we'll be dealing with that priority in April. Also have a live event in April that invites will be coming out soon, and they will sell out. So be sure to register immediately when you see that coming. It's going to be a great session. We're actually going to be talking about how technology can save costs with Avante. We're going to talk to the founders of Avante, who are going to tell us their entrepreneurial story, which is awesome. They're going to tell us about search funds, and they're going to tell us about how technology can save businesses money. So that will be a very great session, and we're really excited that we get to share so much of these people's expertise and learnings with you. So thanks a lot, and thank you, Neil. we'll finish our Okanagan wine discussion very quickly. Priorities,
Take care. Very much.
Thank you.
Bye.